Welcome to Medicine with the Metals. I'm Mark, and this is Michelle. Join us on our psychedelic adventures. Wow, Michelle, definitely glad to be back. It's been a while.
It has. It's been a while, but we are back. We've got Dustin with us, and we're super excited to be coming once a week on a podcast. And we'll be coming live on Wednesday mornings.
We went through some shedding there. We had to shed, like we say in this community. We did some shedding. We got rid of some pieces that weren't kind of working, and we restructured ourselves. And I think we're going to be back better than ever. We have Medicine with the Metals now, and then we have our new little live Q&A. It's called Microdosing with the Metals. Microdosing, Psilocybin, become just so popular lately, and we just got this awesome book.
That is a great book, The Psilocybin Mushroom Bible. Virginia Hayes and Dr. Kay Mandrake,
There
PhD.
There you go.
It's a great book. We just got it. We've been flipping through it for a couple of days now.
Yeah, some really, it's picking up. Psilocybin is really gaining some traction out there. And I think we're gaining some traction with Mama Dose. Mama Dose is one of our great affiliates out there. And she's been doing really wonderful things for people out there.
Mama Dose has expanded to Colorado.
Yeah, she sure
That
has.
is very exciting, isn't it?
Well, speaking of exciting, going on an adventure here soon, aren't we? We both are.
We both are. Where are you going?
I'm going to do Iboga with Shore Boogie. We had Shore in a previous podcast and, resonated with this gentleman quite good. And, I'm going down. I'm leaving in 2 weeks to sit with Iboga again. And really, I'm really excited about that. Really looking forward to this reset I'm going to get from this medicine. I definitely have some things I want to clarify and get worked out, and really excited. And then I'm going to go down after the week, and then we're going to go down and sit with our tribe. And I'll let you talk about that because you love them. And so do I.
I love them. It's the Shawanawa tribe. They're out of Brazil, but they go to Om Jungle Medicine in Costa Rica. And they go serve medicine there usually 2 times a year. And they're going to be there. And right now, Angel, who owns Om Jungle Medicine, actually has 2 spots left. So if anyone is interested in going down there, it's just a beautiful opportunity. The Shawanawa tribe, they're out of Brazil. They come there, and that's who we support. 6% of all the proceeds across our platforms goes to support them and what they do. Currently, they just built 5 fish ponds with 5,000 fish in them each. And that's where the money has gone recently. So
sounds like a small little task to us little United States citizens, but to them, 5,000 fish and 5 farms is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing stuff we're doing.
Very amazing stuff. So we'll have more about that when we get back. Mark's going to go do Iboga first, and then we're going to meet and go do ayahuasca together. So
can't wait to give Shava a big hug. Love them people. Love them so much.
Well, that's kind of a perfect intro to what we're doing today, because we had Garyth Moxey. Is that how we say his last
Moxey,
name?
Yeah.
What a cool guy. Wow.
Absolutely.
So he has got his place up there in Vancouver.
2 different spectrums of the world, big old Vancouver all the way down to Costa Rica. This medicine's all over.
So he is into the Ibogaine and Ibogaine treatment, but he also has, he incorporates psilocybin and 5-MeO into what they do up there. He and his wife, Elizabeth, or his partner, Elizabeth, and it's almost like a treatment center, but with plant medicines.
Yeah,
it is absolutely beautiful. I am so excited to talk with him. It's just, it's a great conversation.
Ibogaine, pretty amazing medicine. 93% success rate.
For opioid addiction.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, amazing. So great show today. We're super excited, and we'll be back.
Hey, Garyth. Glad to have you today. What you're doing is pretty amazing. I've sat with a few of these medicines that you work with, and Iboga and Ibogaine is one of my medicines that really have catapulted my life in a different way. They all kind of touched me in a sense that I felt this definitely was my path because the drastic change. But for something, Iboga was just the real deal for me. Did something special, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Garyth Moxey. I'm an Ibogaine and 5-MeO practitioner. I run Inner Realms with my partner Blair, And she doesn't get enough attention for the work that we do. She's the cohesive glue that holds all of this shit together over here. So,
They usually are.
yes.
So I love what you're doing there, Garyth. Mark and I were in Vancouver, and this past fall we were there for a conference, a psychedelic conference, and we were stunned by the amount of addiction that we saw literally on the streets in
Yeah.
Vancouver. Because if my understanding is correct, they have now how is it the law with all drugs in Vancouver, right? It's tell us how that is first.
Well, I think I haven't really been keeping my finger on the pulse on that one, to tell you the truth. I think it's kind of changing. There had been decrim of all drugs to a certain amount. But there seems to be some backstepping on that. I think maybe that's because people don't like to see public drug use, but then
Yeah.
the people that are engaged in public drug use are the people that don't have homes. So, I
Boy,
would
we
say,
really saw that.
because, nobody cares if people use drugs at home. It's just when they see people using them on the streets, and we've got a pretty unique situation in Vancouver. Well, I guess not so unique now. It seems to be happening in a lot of places, but Vancouver, all of the drugs come in here on the West Coast, and then also if you are homeless and out on the streets, well, then you might not die by being in Vancouver. If you're east of the mountains here, then winters are pretty ferocious. And so I feel that, and the downtown east side is kind of, it's like a lot of people in addiction move this way because of the weather and things like that, homelessness. And because we're on the West Coast, we're in some respects kind of like an extension of San Francisco or that whole West Coast liberal kind of way of thinking. So there's quite a lot of programs in place for people in addiction as well. So
the opioid epidemic is pretty significant.
terrible. Yeah. And that's really all a direct result of the drug war.
Yeah.
Had we had heroin dispensaries like 15 years ago in Vancouver, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in right now.
Just insane. And so this is how did you first get started into Ibogaine? And if you can explain to us sort of what that represents to opioid addiction.
Well, how I got into it was I had drug issues when I was younger as an IV drug user between 19 and 21. But drugs had been, especially when I was living in the inner city kind of thing. So, and drugs and alcohol had always been an issue for me at various times in my life. I went into Alcoholics Anonymous. I first started going to AA in the Philippines, of all places, where there was a lot of foreigners end up in Southeast Asia and open bars and stuff like that, and then proceed to drink themselves to death. So that's where I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was kind of bouncing in and out of the rooms for about 5 or 6 years. I could never really get more than about 6 months sobriety together. And then I'd think, oh, maybe I could just have a beer, and literally halfway down through a can of Budweiser, my brain chemistry has changed. And that person that had that beer can't stop drinking beer or anything that comes afterwards. And then also, if anything else that gets laid on the table probably seems like a good idea when I've been drinking. So I was in that repetitive loop, and I was living in Marin County and in Northern California, just on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge there. And I had been sober for 6 months, but I could feel a relapse was coming around the corner. And I just happened to be in a situation at somebody's house. Some LSD passed in front of me. And I thought to myself, oh, I should take that. I'd taken a lot of LSD when I was younger, but it had been quite some time. And and I knew all about what had happened in Weyburn in Saskatchewan in the 50s with how they were using LSD to treat people with alcohol use disorder.
Yep.
And so with that in mind, I bought the LSD and I kind of set myself up with a session where I would just go in and try and tackle this situation with alcohol and try and put it to rest. Finally. And within about 4 hours of this LSD experience, I knew that my relationship with alcohol was over.
And that was it? Was that your last drink?
Yeah, that was, it will be 24 years ago.
That's amazing.
And so talk to me, but did you continue with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or any
no,
other
I didn't.
12-step program?
And, part of the experience, and look, I'm not bashing AA if that's what works for people. Whatever, one person's recovery isn't the same as another's.
Absolutely.
But during that experience, I had a strong message was like, Garyth, you have got to stop hanging out with those people.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was really revolved around the disease model, which I've never been able to get my head around the fact that I had a quote unquote disease and
Absolutely.
stuff. And so I've never really adhered to that kind of way of thinking. And so it just didn't seem healthy for me to go back to that situation and stand up and sometimes 3 times a day say, hi, I'm Garyth, I'm an alcoholic addict and all of the above. Just
totally
identifying like that was detrimental to my situation.
Yeah, because there's no healing from that. I mean, because you're always classifying yourself as an addict. And,
Right.
Michelle's a big philosopher in this and a big speaker of this. And AA has some great foundations. But, when we work with these medicines, you heal at a cellular level. You are allowed to heal. I mean, there's
Right.
nothing that we're not allowed to heal from. And AA commits you to a reasoning that you're not allowed to heal from these sort of things. They put you in a box. And, that's where we as addicts have been all our life, is in a box. So we're still being labeled and in a box. And what we want to do when we come to these medicines is we want to unlabel people and we want to make people who they are and make them their own gurus, because that's what we are.
That's right. Bring them out of that box. Garyth, I also was in long-term recovery, 15 years in AA and NA before I came to these medicines. And, I believe that, I went to that program to learn how to live my life a different way. And I definitely learned that. But I also started to realize that, after 15 years, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep coming down here and saying these things about myself. And I think there's something more. I think there's something deeper. But the minute I started talking about that, I got shunned. And then my mother committed suicide, and I knew there was something deeper. And I found plant medicines. And the first time I went and did ayahuasca, Dr. Scott at SoulQuest said, I'm going to start crying. He just passed. He said that total recovery is possible. And it was the first thing that I heard. And of course, my AA brain went right to, well, that's bullshit, right? You can't, total recovery impossible. Yes, it is. As soon as those traumas are healed at a cellular level, total recovery is possible. I think that the 12 steps are a beautiful way to live your life, and everybody should learn those 12 steps. But I'm with you.
So what do you feel about that? What do you feel about the whole foundation of, let's not talk about AA, but just the foundation of society, of what we've been taught is like really delusional. So we're at a turning point right now, a really big turning point, I think, in the world.
Let's talk about let's talk about your program and what you do there.
Well, let's talk about
incredible.
first. Why don't we dive into a little bit about Ibogaine and those sort of things.
Absolutely.
And then we'll dive into 5-MeO a little bit. But let's talk about
And
Iboga and Ibogaine. Psilocybin is our favorite. And that's going to be a big topic at the end because that's the Western world medicine.
But talk to us about Iboga and Ibogaine and what is the difference?
Some people might disagree with me on this one. But so far as I can see, like if you could look at Iboga as a pizza, like half of the pizza is Ibogaine. And then there's a bunch of other little slices that are these other, weird slices like pineapple on, or do you know what I mean? There's these alkaloids might have certain properties that are, or do have properties that are useful in healing. But I think Ibogaine is the main alkaloid that we're after there. So I work primarily with Ibogaine, and it's more often working with people in addiction. Whereas I feel that the Iboga experience might be, more appropriate for psychospiritual stuff. Iboga is a little bit harder to take, I think. And in the lower doses, I find that Ibogaine is so we do use Iboga, but we don't use a whole lot of it. I find that Ibogaine on its own, especially in the lower doses, can be a little bit like an Italian meal without the garlic. So we
Can
add,
you use the Ibogaine while they're still in active addiction?
yeah, yeah, and we do.
That's
So
the difference between the
That's the
two,
big
isn't it?
difference
And there
too.
is the success rate with these medicines is absolutely insane. It's, I mean, if worked properly, it's just insane. So,
well,
and
it
I don't
also
like,
depends who we're giving it to. We ideally we prefer to work in the 35 and up range. We do work with younger people, but it's more challenging, and they also don't have kind of like the life experience to bring to that somehow, or a sense of maturity. I don't think that I was really getting, spirituality from LSD until I was a little bit older. When I was younger, I was more about watching the walls drip. But then as I have more life experience, and it's so I find also when we're treating people that having a bit more life experience, is important in
What is
how
what
that
what
how that
what do you
turns
think?
out.
What do you think it is about this medicine that it is with like all the others? I mean, there's something just different about how the reset is with this medicine. I mean, it's a very long, intense journey for Iboga. I know for me, it was like 30 to 40 hours, but the reset with that medicine was just something. And I know you work with this medicine for a while, and I kind of bulk them together because I believe they are a beautiful substance. But what do you think that is? What do you think it is? Do you think you're actually resetting to a younger you?
Well, I think that when you're working with those psychedelics in the right context, that you're kind of engaging with our innate healer that resides within ourselves, and it's having access to that, and then finding the answers there. Which, especially with working with 5-MeO, it's almost like remembering.
Yeah, and those are very two amazing medicines right now, especially with these studies going on. There's a Stanford study, and there's some other kind of studies in the States, but there's a beautiful study with the military vets. They're going to Stanford. They're before they go down, they're they're taking their brain scans, and they're completely dead. They're numb. So they're going down, and they're doing the Ibogaine treatments. And then before they come back, they're doing a dose of 5-MeO. Coming back, then having their brains analyzed again, they're just lit up like Christmas trees. Now, these studies have been going on for the last 2 years, and I've had friends go through these studies, and their life changing experiences like nothing else. So, just amazing to see these just beautiful things happen. And I mean, we need to continue this.
It's also important what people do afterwards, and if there's lasting change, then it's doing the integration properly. Otherwise, a lot of the times I find that if people aren't integrating the experiences properly, it's almost like baking a really good cake and then not putting it in the oven.
What's integration to you?
The unfolding of the information that you might have received through the medicine work, and then how you're going to weave that into your life.
I want to get deep into integration because I believe that integration is the most important part of any journey. But before we do that, let's talk about your program there. I think it's I was in your website and looking over everything, and I think it is absolutely incredible what you're doing there in Vancouver. Nothing like that is being done yet in the United States. The way that you put it all together. So tell us about your program. Tell us about the process of getting people in there, what it looks like once they're there. What does all that look like?
It's a really case by case situation. Everybody, there isn't any cookie cutter to it. It used to be more like that. People would come in, you slam them through a flood dose, some boosters, and then they're kind of out the door. And through all of working with Ibogaine, like when I was trained in Mexico, it was quite a short time that they were having people. And then I started something with somebody else in Vancouver. And in the beginning, it was a week. And then we're like, yeah, this isn't good. We need to have people for longer, for 10 days. And then when Blair and I broke off to do our own thing, we have people for opiate detoxes for a minimum of 2 weeks, normally, unless it's some, a housewife that's on a little bit of oxy, in which case she probably wouldn't need to be with us quite that long. So it's a case by case situation. The problem we have up here is the contaminated dope. We've been dealing with fentanyl for a long time, actually pretty much right from the beginning. It's kind of weird to be saying if we could only have heroin back, but we start again. What happened up here as soon as the Oxy 80s were taken off the market? Well, of course, there's the demand. So then the criminal organizations step in, and then we had knockoff 80s, the 80 milligram Oxys. So that was the first counterfeit stuff that we were dealing with. And in the beginning, there was still a bit of heroin around and everything. And so, a $50 a day habit or even $100 a day habit might have, when we switched them over to morphine, might have been 300-400 milligrams of morphine. But as the carfentanil came in, the drug supply was even more contaminated. We had people rolling in on really high doses. And now the situation's like kind of crazy. So, unfortunately, there's a big section of the people that we can no longer work with. And that's because of the benzos that are in the dope. As you know, Ibogaine doesn't work for benzos. And I don't have a source of benzos here to be able to stabilize people. If I was in Mexico, that might be a bit of a different situation. But then in Mexico, they're having a situation around morphine as well, and counterfeit morphine and things like that, or what should be morphine is.
So basically, what you're saying, Garth, is that you gotta wean the person off of the benzo.
Man, no. I mean, it's because the weaning people off of benzos takes a really long time.
Okay.
And so those people that are using the benzo dope, if they can't make the switch to morphine and dilaudid, then we can't work with them, unfortunately. We have rapid access addiction clinics in the Lower Mainland where they're basically just trying to keep people alive. So if you go in there and you pee hot for fentanyl, then they'll throw hydromorphone at you, and time-release morphine, and then try and get people to switch to a safe supply. But unfortunately, because of the extent of how strong the fentanyl is, even those drugs just are not holding people. And so if they can't jump through those hoops, I can't work with them. We can't work.
That's terrible.
That's
terrible where we've become, though. We've become such a terrible society with what we've created with this, these medications.
War, right? I mean, clearly the drug war doesn't work. It's done nothing but create more problems. You can get drugs are easier to get hold of now than they were when I was a kid, and now, people used to use the dark web and stuff like that. Now it's all Instagram and
sure, it's easy.
Yeah.
I was just watching a thing on methamphetamine in the States and how, these guys just do everything through Instagram, and it's right. So if the drug war was supposed to be keeping anybody safe, well, it hasn't. It's been a colossal failure. And so what are we going to replace it with? Because what we're doing at the moment isn't fucking working.
Yeah. No.
I mean,
it's a big lie,
but it to a certain degree, but it's a little bit too late. Do you know what I mean? They should have been addressing this
in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, but then in the 80s, we had the Just Say No campaign.
Well, that was a big lie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if we classified plant medicines as narcotics, I mean, are we insane? It just doesn't even make sense to me.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we are slowly evolving. We are a distance away from Nixon's drug war, which kind of
For sure.
lumped everything in together. So,
Yeah.
we are slowly, but not fast enough. We're not moving fast enough.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when there's never been a clinical death from cannabis or a clinical death from psilocybin, why is it classified with the same medications that are
Yeah.
clinically dying people every single day?
Heroin.
It's insanity to me. It's
Yeah.
insanity.
Yeah,
So,
I feel that maybe as Wild West as things are out here in British Columbia at the moment, I think that the cannabis got legalized in Canada due to what was going on in British Columbia and Vancouver. Because cannabis was in a gray area, and there were like more weed dispensaries than coffee shops in Vancouver.
Well, now
You know,
you work very closely with your clients with oils, cannabis oils, correct?
That's more. That depends. That's also a case by case thing. But some people that are cannabis naive or something, then it's I don't. But it can be really helpful in an opiate detox. But we make more cannabis oil for cancer patients that have found us through the Dosed movie, the second one.
And then how do you, okay, so when somebody comes in, and I know it's not a one size fits all, so it's different for each person, but you incorporate the Ibogaine, 5-MeO, and psilocybin.
Yeah. Again, that's case by case. Yesterday we did psilocybin. I've had somebody in for an opiate detox, and so I've been working slowly with him, repeatedly in low dose. And I think he was off the morphine on Friday, and today is Wednesday. Yesterday we went for a psilocybin hike through the forest, which was I feel was beneficial for the client. Today we're doing 5-MeO. So 5-MeO is normally at the end of opiate detoxes or any of the Ibogaine work. I find that there's a synergy that happens with the 5-MeO and Ibogaine. That you get a better result working with both of them than you would with either of them on their own, if that kind of makes sense.
I think that makes so much sense because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're working with the God molecule, the molecule that actually, I've just experiencing that medicine is, to me, I think it's the closest thing you're ever going to get to death because the DMT release is just so intense. And when you see that white light and that vivid, I mean, I've had those exposures to that, and there's nothing that I could, that actually helped me not fear death anymore. I don't fear to die anymore. I fear the beauty of it. I think at the end of the day, that's what we're here for is to, I mean, that is our gift, right? I believe so.
Yeah, one of the most important aspects I find with the 5-MeO, working with people in addiction, is the possibility for self-love. And as we come through the working with the Ibogaine and stuff, which can be not easy. There are a lot of shadow material can come up, when we're working with Ibogaine, but the 5-MeO at the end, it's yeah. For people, remember in addiction, that's the last thing we have is any self-love. It's always like self-criticism and, forever berating ourselves about this, that, and the other. And then to be able to step in with a medicine like that and then to feel that on a cellular level, it's
I think that connection with the 5-MeO is really important too. That sense of belonging and all being one. It was this total understanding of I get it, I get it, I get it. We're all one, and I think that from an addiction point of view, because for myself in my addiction, I felt so separate.
yeah,
And so that feeling of being connected and being
yes.
one, which was the biggest gift I received from 5-MeO. Again, I'm going to cry. It's so emotional to me.
It gets me
It
choked up
is.
talking about
It
It
it.
does.
does.
It's
I
a
get
very
chills all
powerful.
over my whole body because
Yeah.
it's such a connection. It's such an understanding of connection, and it's easy to lose that. How do I say this? I haven't lost that connection, but remembering, like the second time I did 5-MeO, we videotaped it for very personal reasons, and the whole time I kept saying, "I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it." And afterwards, the facilitator asked me, "What do you get?" And I said, "Everything, everything. I get everything," and I understood it completely. Now, 3 days later, when I was going back and watching it, I didn't remember everything exactly as I remembered it on my journey, but that connection was still there.
Because I think we all, like, I say this in a humble way, but we search for God. And at the end of the day, God is us. When we say that, when we search so hard, these medicines show us the truth at the source. And the source is us. The source is God. The source is that. And I don't know. A lot of people are afraid of these medicines. And this is what we're here to do. We're here to express that, there's the fear becomes behind your fear, because without the fear, we're just stuck in a world of emptiness.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
cry a lot on these, but
Yeah, we do. We cry on all of them.
these medicines really touch my soul. If a lot of people would understand that we've been lied to for so long, and there's been such
There's such
a
beauty.
demise, yeah. And we'll dive into our favorite medicine here very shortly, and that's going to be psilocybin, because psilocybin, I've done them all. I've sat with them all. Ayahuasca was my love. I loved her to death until I met Iboga, and then I loved Iboga, and then I met psilocybin, and then I love psilocybin. But I think psilocybin, actually, I think that's the introduction to the Western world medicine. I think it's a beautiful medicine. I think it could be experienced by the naive, the novice, the inexperienced. I think, it's the medicine that if you understand it and you find your dose, it could really work. And it really does work. And it's wonderful because it creates new neural pathways. And they're telling us our brains don't regenerate.
Yeah, they
Shit,
do.
they regenerate.
Yeah.
I'm smarter now than I was when I was 16.
You probably thought you were a lot smarter at 16.
Fuck yeah. I ruled the world. Now I'm just humble.
Yeah, mushrooms, coming from the UK, a lot of us in the psychedelic world cut our teeth on psilocybin, just because they grow wild there, the small liberty caps. So that's kind of how most of us got our introduction into that world, so.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so you use psilocybin. We love psilocybin. We just think it's such a beautiful medicine, and it's such. The thing about psilocybin is anybody can access it, right? And anybody can use this medicine. It's not like ayahuasca where it's you should go to
Sure.
church, or iboga, or this is a
Yeah.
medicine that you can do at home with the proper guidance.
Yeah.
So
Form
let's
your
talk
own
about
relationship.
psilocybin.
Yeah.
Yes,
Form a relationship.
exactly.
Yeah.
Be your own guru.
It becomes such an intuitive medicine. It's such a beautiful medicine. And everybody who starts microdosing always gets called. I always tell them the mushrooms call you. They're going to call you deeper, and they always do. So talk to us about the psilocybin and how that works into your program.
Well, psilocybin is a request, that people come specifically to work with psilocybin. Or I will throw it in where I feel that it might be beneficial to somebody. If we have somebody for a longer period of time, then yeah, we're probably going to incorporate some psilocybin into the experience. But it's more often people coming specifically for that, so that's kind of what we offer is Ibogaine, 5-MeO, and psilocybin. So yeah, like I say, I did the synthesis course. I was on the first year around with that, and that was very insightful. They were doing more about ceremonial stuff and working in ceremonies. I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I find that if I prefer just to work with one person, if I'm working with more than that, in an individual session. So I find that the ceremony model is a little overwhelming for me. So, yeah.
And how about your thoughts on microdosing and microdosing after ceremony or after, going through these experiences?
Yeah. It can be very useful for people. I tend to have people microdosing LSD. I
I've
think
heard
that might
this.
be, sorry?
I've heard this.
Wonderful
I've heard this very
things.
beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be more about my own preference, I think. growing up in the 80s, we did bucket loads of LSD. So it was very, there was a lot of it around in the 80s and stuff.
We would have been really good friends in high school, Gareth.
I find that psilocybin couch locks me a little bit. It was nice yesterday when we were out in the forest and stuff, but otherwise I tend to not get things done if I microdose mushrooms, so I prefer LSD.
That is very interesting. That's what we tell everybody because it's such a different medicine and it reacts differently to so many different people. Some people will get tired on psilocybin, some people get active, some people get clarity. But, you're always creating new neural pathways. No matter what's happening, you're still creating something new. So, these medicines might not be for everybody. And I think the biggest thing that keeps a lot of people away from these medicines, agree with me or not, is anxiety. Would you agree? Anxiety keeps us away
Sure.
from all these medicines.
Yeah, I mean, and also, the anti-drug, the anti-drug lobby or whatever did a really good job, stigmatizing drug use. And as much as we get all of these things like How to Change Your Mind, the Dosed movies, all of these other things that, it's pretty niche in some respects. We were all like, yeah, everybody's going to be doing this, a few years ago.
Same with
Same here.
us.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
with us.
All my
You know,
with synthesis and everything, and as we find out, talking to the guys that did the Dose movies, they're like, yeah, we could have literally done movies about anything other than this, and we would have made more out of it because it's quite niche.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So
You think why do you think that is? Because society has been so, I don't want to say brainwashed, but
Conditioned.
brainwashed.
The conditioning
They've
is
been
so
conditioned.
strong, it's unbelievable.
yeah. I think that the sort of people that would step out of the normal framework and do something like that are those sort of people, anyhow, like us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
I do.
We were the ones that didn't pay attention in school.
yeah, exactly. But we've got like 20 mushroom dispensaries in town now.
Oh,
And
I know. We were
was-
there.
Yeah, I was like, how on earth are they going to? How do these guys keep going? Because cannabis dispensaries, yeah, like people use weed every day. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of something that you need to go to the store every day or every few days or something. But like mushroom dispensary, I'm like, I went to Dana's and I bought Dana Larson's place, and I bought like an eighth or something or other. Maybe I got a quarter ounce for to do a little bit of work with people, and maybe take a little bit myself. But I'm not going to need to, because we work with Penis Envy. I'm not going to need to go back there for a while.
Right.
So
It's not like a
how are
daily.
these guys making money? Well, I guess a lot of people, more people in Vancouver are probably taking mushrooms now. It's probably true. And the microdosing thing, I think a lot of people are doing that as well. So
Absolutely. We're very deep into microdosing. Let's talk really quickly about integration, because we do believe, the whole reason Mark and I started the plant medicine path to begin with was for integration. We believe that integration is the biggest part of a journey. Without it, it's just an experience, and maybe it's a really cool one, maybe it's a scary one, but it's an experience. And without that integration, what is it? So what is integration to you, and how do you incorporate integration with your clients?
to tell you the truth, I don't do a whole lot of it myself. I pass that on to integration specialists,
Yep.
which I feel are a little bit more qualified to do that than I am. So that's kind of, I mean, if people are not having a difficult time or challenging, then I might help with them with that. But I'd rather pass them over to different
Somebody
people.
that
I love
we're
that. So you have
working with.
integration coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And,
It's
and
so
then
important.
also for our addiction stuff, I work mostly with Anders Beatty, and he might be somebody interesting for you to have on the show at some point or
Definitely.
other.
Absolutely.
He's from the Ibogaine counseling services, and so he works with a lot of our addiction clients. He himself was heavily addicted to cocaine and crack cocaine. So, between both of us, we have the lived experience of drug use, but he's really good at reining people in, before coming into treatment and doing post I mean, doing pre counseling coming into doing the work, and then the integration work afterwards. And depending on, it's a case by case again as to how much somebody might need through that process.
Hmm. Well, somebody that just came to my mind when you mentioned him was Gabor. Gabor really put Canada on the map and really put addiction on the map. And really, that man's very intelligent when he comes to talk with his softness and how he approaches these addiction with such a common sense reality is just. I first met him, not met him, but was introduced to him in 2020. So it was probably around there where very intriguing man, and just how he explains stuff with such common sense and such.
We met him in Vancouver when we
Yeah,
were up
we did.
there recently.
Yeah, well, he was the frontline doctor at the Portland Hotel Society, which is a non-profit downtown that works with a lot of people in addiction. So he was seeing firsthand, and then he wrote that book, The Hungry Ghosts book, which was really documenting people down there, and the fact that it's trauma that has landed them there in the downtown east side.
But
Whereas
isn't
He
it?
a lot
really
of
gave a name to it.
Yeah.
the stuff that before, a lot the general attitude was like, oh, they're just drug users, degenerates,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
I mean, the fact that there was trauma behind people's drug use was kind of not on a lot of people's radar. So
Yeah.
It is. It's the reason why we're here, right? It's the reason why you're here. I mean, we all came from trauma. We all come from family lineages of trauma, and we all have trauma in our life. I don't care who you are. If you stubbed your toe when you were 4, or if you were raped by your father when you were 7, you still have some sort of trauma. And people like the things we do in societies, like how we've labeled stuff, and you know, America's no better than Canada. Like what we've done
Oh,
here,
Canada
and
has it figured out better than America.
for sure. I mean, our medical system and the FDA and just how we distribute narcotics and drugs is just insanity. And every commercial we have on is about another medication that they're coming out with that will kill you. Are you kidding me? And we just continue to shun away these plant medicines that have been used for eons and eons, on top of what? Until about the 1800s. And then we put a niche to them. And then we said, these things are bad. They make you crazy. But if you go back in biblical times, just pick up the Bible and look at a DMT plant and look at acacia trees and see where all the sacrament comes from, boys. That's where it is. So,
yeah. Well, the drug war was kind of really started with the New World.
Yeah.
Because they came over here and then they were using peyote and ayahuasca and all, and the psilocybin, and that's kind of where there was the beginnings of that part of the drug war. I mean, I guess we were doing our own thing in Europe to witches or anybody that
had any kind of
with
different
any kind
idea.
of sway away from
Right.
the church and stuff. So I guess in some respects the drug war is an extension of that. Really,
definitely.
It's the devil's work.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing what you're doing?
I'm not too sure really. I don't think things are going to change much here. It'd be interesting to see how they're going to tackle plant medicine workers and stuff. I don't know how it's going to go with licensing and stuff like that. I don't think that we'll ever be able to legally work with Ibogaine here in Canada. I think it will be taken over by the medical establishment, and there'll be quite some strict laws around that. It's already in the Schedule 6, so they already did that to try and stop people from working with it. That happened in 2016 or 2017. Somebody called me up and said, "Hey, did you know that Ibogaine has been rescheduled in Canada?" And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, go look on Health Canada's page." So I looked at it, and it's like, yeah, for sure, it had been illegal for a year. It's not like they called us up and said, "Oh, by the way," So
it's just insane. So the underground is the way to go for a while until they.
it's going to be because they're refusing to do anything. Like Dana Larson from the Mushroom Dispensary, they raided him. Took all of his, from his 3 locations, took all of his product and locked him up for 8 hours, but didn't charge him. And then he went back and restocked his 3 locations and promptly opened back up. And then there was a meeting with that was going to happen, or a meeting did happen with the city councillors about forming some kind of framework around mushroom dispensaries. But I think psilocybin's a Schedule 1, so it's a bit, we're in a situation where they're like, oh, kind of like the cannabis dispensaries. We'll just let them, it's the Wild West, we'll just let them do their thing, and
Well, when we were in Vancouver, we went into a dispensary one day, a mushroom dispensary, and they had LSD and they had MDMA and they had mushrooms, but they had just been raided, and so but they only took some of the stuff. It was so funny. She was like, "Oh, you can get this still and this," but they took this
he's
and
been
this.
raided again. He's been raided again. Yeah, and but
Fascinating. It was fascinating. Mark
But
and
you
I were
now,
amazed.
but you now in the States now, now cannabis is like, to the government, it's like, wow, this is the new gold, to them. But remember, just 10 years ago, it was the evil weed.
sure,
It's just
yeah,
so bizarre how they
yeah.
flipped the switch.
Well, I mean, we're slowly evolving, right? And so
We think.
yeah. Well, I first got my first cannabis card in California, and when I first came here, 15 years ago, it was very difficult for me to find cannabis or even get cannabis to get a card to be able to get cannabis. But then that all changed very quickly, and I watched it change very quickly in the States, how cannabis was, now there's no longer medical cannabis, now there's recreational cannabis. And do you know what I mean? So it's never moving at the speed we'd like to see it move.
There are still people locked up in the United States
Yeah,
for
yeah,
cannabis. There are
yeah.
still
Probably, yeah,
people
black or brown
locked up.
people, probably,
Yep.
but for the most
Absolutely
part,
black or brown.
yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
So,
terrible.
so
Yeah.
before we end here, why don't we talk a little bit about your place? Why don't we mention some names? Why don't we talk about what it's about, where it's located?
Yeah. Well, we're in the Lower Mainland. We're actually kind of away from Vancouver at the moment. I don't say exactly where we're working, but we're kind of on the coast. And yeah, we have quite a large house that we're using at the moment with beautiful views and stuff. When people come over to work with us, they, depending on what people are coming in for. We've got a lady coming in the next few days, is coming in to work around depression and trauma. So our nurse will fly over from Vancouver Island, so we'll do a flood dose on that day here at the house, work with 5-MeO at the end. And then we've got detoxes coming in after that. So we're kind of out of a main city, but we're very close to a hospital. When people come out to do 5-MeO with us, we encourage people to stay over here in this area in an Airbnb for 3 to up to a week if they can afterwards, just to process what they have just been through. When we're doing opiate detoxes, people normally stay with us for 2 weeks or longer. We've been working quite a bit recently with Inscape. I don't know if you know those guys down in Mexico. That's an Ibogaine Aftercare facility where people go down for 6 weeks. And they might do a little bit of ayahuasca there as well.
That's wonderful. I have not heard of
Yes.
this.
Yeah. Inscape.
Inscape. Definitely going to
Inscape.
look
Yeah,
them up.
one word. Yeah. Yeah.
What's amazing about these things, what you were talking about as we talk, the government, whatnot, will pay for 30-day drug treatment programs, 28 days. And, we send some of these people in, 3 days in, 3 days out, ayahuasca, this. I love the fact, and this is something we've always encouraged, these longer 2-3 weeks, months, take yourself out of that for a while, get yourself new brain process, new thoughts, don't just indulge yourself in medicine right away and hop into the 3D world. It's just really rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
important to take the time.
yeah, it is. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the resources for that.
Absolutely. You're very true.
We're already expensive, but we're cheaper in a lot of places in Mexico. but then to put aftercare on top of that as well, it can get quite expensive. We work with a lot of highly functioning people that have businesses and big cocaine habits, or for an example thereof. So then there's more often the chance to have the resources to do something like that. It's getting people to commit to that. People in addiction, we always try and wiggle our way out the easiest way if we can,
Absolutely.
and then
Yep,
we
for sure.
learn through trial and error. Like, fuck, that's not good. I've got to put more into this. So that's why we would rather work with people in their 30s and above. That their addiction is no longer. In the beginning, it's kind of like a hot
Fun.
new girlfriend that's making
Right.
everything great and groovy, and then by the end, it's got to be this is an abusive partner that needs to go. And
Yeah.
by the time people are in their 30s,
I love
doesn't
that.
become an abusive partner that really needs to go. So yeah, and then people when they're older, they've probably been through traditional rehab a few times and stuff like that. So then they're more ready to commit and have a bit more maturity around committing because it takes work.
Yeah,
It's not
for
just
sure.
coming through the medicine. That's the medicine part's one part.
That's easy.
That's the
It's
easiest
the
part of it.
integration afterwards and like I say, weaving all of that stuff into your life.
Hmm. And you know what? These medicines definitely work. They definitely work when you do that process. When you take the medicine, when you do the integration, and you change your life. Because if you're not changing anything, what are you doing this for? If you just want to sit there, just sit there. That's where most society is right now. And just talking to you, yeah, you're just that guy. So, and I really appreciate it.
I thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate what you're doing there. I love their concept and pulling all the things in together and working with the 12 steps because they are beautiful, right? And all the things. I think it's absolutely beautiful what you're doing, and I'm just grateful for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. If you like when I recovered with the LSD, that's when it brought me to Ibogaine. I was like back then. This is almost 24 years ago. So it was just finger tapping on my friend's Apple computer about psychedelic recovery, and then I'd known about Iboga since I was very young, but not about its addiction breaking qualities. So when I found out about that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Canada and open an Ibogaine clinic. And that was a long time ago. I met my ex-wife at a Burning Man party in San Francisco. So coming to Canada to open an Ibogaine clinic got put on a back burner for quite some time. But it all happened as it was supposed to happen and when it was supposed to happen. We had an Ibogaine providers conference here in 2012. And so I met some key people in that, especially Claire Wilkins. Um, that's somebody you guys might want to speak to at some point. She was kind of my Ibogaine mentor, and then also I met my 5-MeO mentor at that conference as well, and she came from the Ralph Metzner lineage. So in the beginning, it was all about insufflated 5-MeO, and not the vaporizing of it, which is quite a different way of working with that medicine as well. It's a more somatic way of working with it. It's
Really?
just
What
sometimes
What
was the
does that
first one you
mean?
said? I've never heard that one before.
insufflated 5-MeO.
Yeah, what is
What
it?
does that mean?
Insufflated is the correct term for sticking shit up your nose.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know it should be insufflated or
So
something like that.
is that like a
Like
changa?
hot
Is that
bay?
like changa?
No, what it is, we use HCl, or some people still use freebase as well. You're just snorting a very small amount of that, and you snort it up into these capillaries here. It's not like doing blow off a bar at 4 a.m. or anything like that. It's just
It's kind of like hot
it's
bay,
just
maybe?
no. It's just a slight inhalation. So you snort up into these capillaries, and then it goes in quite quickly. But the onset of insufflated is much slower. So it's
Oh,
kind of like you dissolve around the edges
Interesting.
almost, and it's a much more of a somatic
wow.
experience. So yeah, and this is how we were working with it in the first few years, and then Freebase came
That's
around, and then we could start working with that. But yeah, the 5-MeO, Ralph Metzner was the one that is kind of like the grandfather of 5-MeO, and he was teaching people how to work with it. back in the late 80s, 90s, I think. But it was all insufflated. It wasn't vaporized, which
Smoked.
produces
I've heard of
quite
that
a
before.
different experience. And sometimes we start people with insufflation, and that you drop down and level off. And so it's an experience for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then you slowly start coming back up to baseline. That's when we start with the vaporization.
That is
It
so
can
interesting.
extend the experience. Sometimes a session can last as long as 3 hours.
Wow.
That would be very. That's my next step.
Yep.
Thinking about that
Yep.
one.
Yeah, because you're really, it seems like you're really working with the medicine instead of it just
Absolutely.
going and you know.
Yeah, with vaporization, you're always moving one direction. You're either going deeper into yourself and coming back up again, whereas this is a much more steady and level, and you can go as deep as you want, and so you can get a very, very deep experience. It's just goes on for a long time, which can be a bit challenging. If it's a challenging experience, you've got to be with it. With the vaporization, you're going to be out of that quite quickly. But with the insufflation, nah, you're in there.
And I think that might be appealing to some people about 5-MeO bufo is that it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes, so you're not in a 6-hour ayahuasca journey if it's difficult. And I've heard a lot of people say that's what attracts them to
Yeah,
5-MeO.
but we step people very slowly, or when we're working with anything, we don't then throw anybody in the deep end of the pool.
God, I
So,
love that. I love
we
that you
work
do that.
very slowly with the 5-MeO. And then if people are okay, can we go a little bit deeper? Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. And so some people have been traumatized by 5-MeO, being served too much too soon. And more so with Bufo, they tend to be a little bit more machismo around that in Mexico. And we're all about the gentle approach, because that is probably one of the most expansive experiences that anybody could have. And so we want to do that carefully and slowly so that people can get the most out of it instead of being scared to death and then being traumatized and having to deal with that afterwards, compacting on the trauma they've already experienced in life.
Then
That's
have
a really
medicine trauma. Yeah.
and
Medicine.
that's really one of the first few times you do that medicine that really, that first week, give yourself a break because you might want to just quit everything and just run naked in the Philippines. So just give yourself about a week to just come back to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
You need time. Well, you are a great guy, Garyth. I have enjoyed this conversation
very
so
much
much.
so.
Mark and I are
Thank
going
you.
to
It
come
was
see you
very
up in
much
Vancouver.
chatting with you guys as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Passe, passe,
Basse,
passe.
Basse.
you're
Thank you
welcome to
so
come and
much.
visit us anytime if you're
We
up.
would
Yes.
love that. Thank you for the work that you do and your partner
Thank you,
Blair.
and you guys too. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We will talk again. Thank you, my friend.
All right.
Plant medicine saved the world.
That was an incredible show. What a cool guy.
Cool
That's all I
guy.
can think is like cool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Him and his wife, very, very cool people up there in Vancouver. I mean, so much respect. 30 years doing this, like before it was even like knowledgeable or known. And this guy's diving into these medicines like that.
So
Pretty cool.
knowledgeable and how he comes from a place of experience. I mean, he came from drug addiction and that's how he got started in this. And I think it's really cool how he and Elizabeth, is that his wife's
I
name,
think
his
so.
partner, how they individualize each person and their experience there. Because it's not a one size fits
And I
all.
think that's what we always say on this journey, when no matter what psychedelics in general, we're taught so well in the Western world that, one size fits all. Take this medicine, get numb and dumb. This is like psychedelics are a different kind of healing meditation, healing medicine. They're just, they work differently. You have to pay attention to what's going on sometimes. You just can't take a pill and just say everything's going to be fine. And I just like the whole 2 week, 3 week, 4 week process. I think it's very important to get yourself out of that arena for a while and integrate some new thoughts. That's just my thought process. I
It's
think it's really
important to get out of your life cycle for
Sure.
more than a weekend or 5 days or even 28 days, right? Which is a normal treatment program. It's important because it takes that long. you're creating those new neural pathways, but to fill them with new things. You know how they always say right after ceremony is the most important time, those couple of weeks when those neural pathways are establishing, to start establishing new habits. And so, because that's what sticks with you.
Well, just look what benefited us. I mean, look at COVID. COVID was there. We did ayahuasca. COVID gave us a chance to really sit home. If I had to go back to work, I don't think this process would have worked for me. You have to have some integration process. You have to have some integration. You have to get away from the matrix somehow.
You do, because if you go right back into the pressures of your life, then nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So if you go and you have this very profound experience and then you're thrown right back into the water with the sharks, it's beautiful what they're doing. I appreciate it so much. You and I spent some time in Vancouver. We went to a psychedelic conference up there and we were stunned by the amount of drug addiction flaunted right out in the streets. It was so sad.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. You know, war on drugs hasn't worked. War on not drugs hasn't worked. Just how they class, you know, they really have to, we have to revisit this whole cycle we're doing. You know, I think things are happening. So not soon enough, but things are definitely happening. But great conversation today with him. Fantastic. I would never do 30 grams of mushrooms, but more power to him though.
Okay, let's hit on that really quick before we go, because I when he said, let's talk about high doses, I'm thinking 8 to 10 grams. Now I went and sat with a vet in Texas who did 8 grams and I was very nervous to sit with her. Very experienced medicine woman. So this was not, something crazy for her. And it went well. This is not what Garyth was talking about. Garyth was talking about 30 to 40 grams of psilocybin. So he talked about a gentleman, and I apologize, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a professor, and he does this. He did a 40-gram journey, and he did a YouTube, and I watched about his journey, and holy shit, I would never do something like this.
I think my anxiety would just kill me. But, nobody's ever died from psilocybin, but I think that would make me die.
There are realms out there that we cannot understand.
Yep.
And that 40 grams of psilocybin takes you to those realms. I don't think I care to see them, though.
I think baby steps is better for me.
I think microdosing is much more my way than a 2-gram journey, man, maybe, but 40 grams. But it's beautiful. He was an incredible guest, Garyth.
Great comeback show.
Much.
Great comeback guest show.
Absolutely.
I think this new routine we're going to have is going to be really good. We're going to have a new background next time.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, thanks so much. We're excited to be back, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday mornings as well. Microdosing with the Metals, live Q&A. Just a quick 20 minutes every Wednesday to
educate,
answer questions.
There we go.